Oof. Good morning, BookTube. Welcome to the September book haul, in which I demonstrate my complete and utter lack of self-restraint when it comes to buying books. So pour yourself a cuppa or something stronger, depending where it is where you are, when it is where you are, and buckle up, because it's a bit of a ride. So, as people who watch this channel regularly know, I am not big on buying things on the internet. I will occasionally get a book from the internet, usually through intermediaries, and it's just not enjoyable for me. I mostly concentrate on getting books in the wild, and I rely on what happens to be where I happen to go and what can be found. So it's very much a hunter-gatherer attitude towards acquiring books, rather than your true collector in spirit. And it's been a great month. I have been perhaps targeting some books more than others, but it's been good. So, recently on another person's channel, there was a bit of a discussion about fantasy books and how he had personally gone off fantasy books. And I sympathized with that. For many years, my fantasy reading went down to virtually zero because they just didn't excite me. They were good. I liked them. Yes, I've read Abercrombie. I think I might have read some Sanderson at some stage. Definitely read Rothfuss. He's over there. Anthony Ryan, he's over there as well. And I enjoyed many of these books, but they didn't have that glow of thrill that early fantasy reading did for me, and I slowly drifted away until I discovered Mark Lawrence. Mark Lawrence, I borrowed a audiobook from the library of his Broken Empire, and once again I felt that thrill, fascination and true addiction of fantasy. So when I was wandering through an op shop, what you guys I think call, or most of you call it, a charity shop, and I came across Prince of Fools, which is apparently the first in his Red Queen's War saga. I bought it on the name alone, because Mark Lawrence so far has never led me astray. And I thought, well, this is the first in the series. I'll buy it, I'll read it, I'll probably enjoy it. If I like it as much as I like the others, I'll go out and I'll buy them all. And then, the very next week, when I finished work, I stopped by the RSPCA charity shop, which raises funds for animals in need, and I came across Mark Lawrence, the exact same livery, books 2 and 3 in the same trilogy, and I thought, well, that's a sign. I will read all 3 in time. There's a bit of heft there, so it might take me a while, and if I like them as much as I expect, I'll go out and buy them new, because Mark Lawrence is a current author, and the purchases that I make with my credit card help support his amazing writing. I don't know if these 3 are amazing yet, but I feel the chances are good based on previous Mark Lawrence experiences. What else? So, there is, speaking of the fantasies, which I have in the past loved, but moved away from, Juliet Marília. I have seen a couple of people holding up Juliet Marília books. I don't know that I've seen a single review. She writes what is, without a doubt, fantasy, but some of them are mythic fairy tale retellings, and all of them are quite interesting in tone. Now, she is, I believe, an Australian author. She may be a Kiwi, so Australia, New Zealand, and I have never heard of her Forest series. Again, there's some heft, there's some girth happening here. Daughter of the Forest is apparently the first one, and followed by Son of Shadows. Both of them are Pan Macmillan Australia. I'm not delighted with books that are fantasy and take pictures from old artwork, but you know, if I like them, I like them. We'll see. A lot of the Juliet Marília I used to have has sort of gone by the wayside, and I was sorry. I was actually really excited when I saw her name because I thought it might be some of the Black Witch or Blackpool series that I used to love and would like to reread. Now, where I found those two books is interesting. If you've ever been to Southport, it's a central part of the Gold Coast. There's a lot of stuff happening there. It kind of is what it is. But there is one street, and I can't remember its name, where there are something like 6 or maybe 7 op shops, second-hand shops, one after another, just in a row. Most of which have books, so it's often slim pickings. If you've got half an hour after finishing work, it might be worth stopping by and seeing what you can find. And I do that every few months, and I always find something. And that's where I found the Juliet Marilliers. That was in the Lifeline bookshops, which raise funds for suicide prevention. So it's a worthy cause, which meant that I wasn't too sad to pay I think it was about $4 each. Lifeline is no longer a source of cheap books. It's discovered the value of what it has. Now, somewhere on that row of Southport bookstores, I also discovered, thank goodness, Beauty by Sherry S. Tepper. Sherry S. Tepper is one of those authors back in the day where fantasy was something that was thrilling, exciting, insightful, well written, and kept you thoroughly engrossed. Beauty is her retelling of the Sleeping Beauty story, but it comes with quirks. Now, it's been ever so long since I owned this or read it, but I'm excited to reread it. Lots of people think it's the best fairy tale retelling out there, or at least was the best when it came out. Now, while Sherry S. Tepper writes books that very much scan like fantasy, there's usually a sci-fi element in there as well. And in Beauty, I do believe we've got a protagonist that's from the 15th century or so-ish, England, who is then catapulted into the future of when Tepper was actually writing this. So you've got past and you've got future and you've got timey-wimey stuff happening. And I do believe you have an excellent tale. Not short, not fast, but I do believe it's wonderful and I'm looking forward to it. It's so long since I read that this will practically be a first read for me rather than a reread. I don't expect to remember hardly anything from it because off the top of my head I don't. Okay, so from there we are moving up the hill. If you ever go to Byron Bay, I shouldn't tell you this, I should keep it secret. But most of you aren't in Australia, so I'm safe. If you ever go to Byron Bay, which is incredibly worldwide famous, it's got movie stars and everything in it, and no rent that anyone can afford and virtually no parking, but it is a beautiful part of the world. I've gone diving there a number of times. If you drive up the hill into the New South Wales hinterland, you will come to a tiny little town called Clunes. You will also come to Bexhill. I don't know why I find those particular Australian towns named after England so funny, but I do. Anyway, in Clunes, there is this marvellous old bookshop. This is one of the true bookshops, the ones that we inveterate readers think of when we think of a bookshop. It is Uncle Peter's Books. And as you can see from this, it is basically... Focus, camera, focus. Oh well. Or not. It is basically an house, an old Queenslander style house, so in New South Wales. And the whole house is books. You walk in through a covered veranda in which children's books are. Outside are some boxes of $2 books. It's a marvellous place. And I spent quite some time there. While I was there, I came across something which was to me the motherlode. Earlier this year, I reread a couple of Gerald Durrell's. I loved Gerald Durrell back in the day, and I had most of his books. Past Deb decided she didn't have enough space for books and needed to narrow down her collection. That woman, she crazy. She crazy. I don't know what she was up to, and now I have to make up for her errors. I no longer have all the Gerald Durrell books, and I would really quite like to reread them all in more or less chronological order. So I reread the Corfu trilogy, and somewhere down in my history there's going to be the reviews for those. Gerald Durrell, of course, was a naturalist, as they called them at the time, a zoologist, and he established possibly the very first conservation zoo on the island of Jersey in the English Channel. I didn't have his books, and I found in the back room a whole heap of them. So we have got The Whispering Land by Penguin, with this gorgeous cover illustration by Julia Watley. These are the old Penguin Gerald Durrells that I remember, with their wonderful illustrations. Sometimes they had them in size, and this one does too. So Vampires and Wine is chapter 7. Gerald Durrell's writing is amazing. And for anyone who's into zoology and animals, I do thoroughly recommend it. I'm excited to reread these. Menagerie Manor is a penguin. This cover photograph is by Bruce Coleman. And is a self-crested cockatoo. They're Australian. Gerald Durrell wasn't. He was English. 3 Singles to Adventure by Gerald Durrell. Again, cover photograph by Ross Kinn. I do believe the macaw this time. It's very birdy. I'd forgotten how birdy it was. Not sure that I have ever owned this one before, but I am looking forward to rereading it. Fontana brought out Gerald Durrell's as well, with Beasts in My Belfry, new in paperback apparently. And they copied that jokey zoology illustration. This one is by Arthur Robbins. I do prefer the penguin illustrations, but you know. Rosie is My Relative by Gerald Durrell is actually not about himself collecting animals around the world, as most of his books are. This is actually the story of Rosie, the elephant in question. And I know that I've never read this. I know I encountered it once, but didn't actually read it. So that'll be new to me. Gerald Durrell. While I was looking for Gerald Durrell, which I have been for some weeks, I came across 2 Gerald Durrell adjacent books. Oh, by the way, I didn't clean out Uncle Peter's Gerald Durrell completely. There's a couple more there, the ones I already have. I was very restrained. They were penguins. They were in beautiful condition. I wanted them, but I already have them. I don't need them. Gerald's first wife was Jackie, and she features in some of his books, and she wrote a book, which has been published in Fontana, Beasts in My Bed by Jackie Durrell. Now, I do know that I read this at one stage, and it was a funny book, but I didn't think that it had quite the same flow that Gerald's writing did. So I didn't like it that much, and I didn't keep it. It'll be interesting to see if more mature Deb enjoys it more than past Deb, who made poor choices when it came to books. Also in my search for all the zoology is In the Shadow of Man by Jane Goodall. Jane Goodall, of course, is Gorillas in the Mist lady, and this is her book. It's old and it's in poor condition, but I'm there for the animals, and it does include various black and white illustrations of her time with the gorillas. I've read about Jane Goodall in a number of other books, including, I think one of them was in Attenborough. So I'm quite interested in that. I believe she was at times a tricky person to get along with. So it'll be interesting to see how things transfer. Okay, still in Ben's books, going through the children's section, I came through this Penguin by Robert Westall. Puffin, by Robert Westall. The Scarecrows. Now this was interesting because I'd just been up in Lismore visiting with some friends. Hi Gabe, if you're watching. And Gabe, who also likes reading and with whom I occasionally discuss books, mentioned Robert Westall and asked if I'd read one particular book of his. This isn't it, but you don't see Robert Westall that often, and when I came across this one, I picked it up. So the Scarecrow sounds like it might be more of a peacock than a puffin, really. It doesn't sound like it's for children so much as younger people, and it sounds like it's a bit spooky. So, while reluctantly spending the summer in his hated stepfather's house, Simon Woods takes refuge from the family pressures in the old mill house across the field. A discarded newspaper shows that it has been empty since 1943. Simon somehow knows there's more than meets the eye, and then the scarecrows appear. 3 figures standing among the turnips. Of course they're turnips. Quite motionless, so inhumanly motionless, it was beyond belief. Who were they? He had to know. I'm going to read this in October. I've never really before done this spooky October thing. Halloween wasn't something we celebrated growing up, so I never got into the vibe. But this time I am getting into the vibe. At the moment, I'm reading Picnic at Hanging Rock, which I shall be discussing with Chris over at Liminal Spaces. Hopefully that'll be the first review or an early review in October. And I'm going to do this October spooky thing. I've got a whole heap of spooky short stories there that I'm thinking of. And so it was perfect when at some point somewhere I came across this pan edition of The Stepford Wives. Now this is a book that I've never read. I deeply loved the movies. Are there 2 of them or 3 of them? I liked the old black and white one. I thought it was creepy as anything. And I even liked the more recent one with Nicole Kidman. I know a lot of people trashed that movie, but I thought it was really good and really brought up the science fiction element to the horror of the Stepford Wives that previously wasn't as strong, I think, in the black and white. Anyway, Ira Levin is a horror writer. Don't know what else he was. He wrote Rosemary's Baby, which I read many years ago and enjoyed. And I'm pretty sure that this author has been showcased recently on Ira, other Ira, not this one, channel, SF Words of Wonder. So I'm really looking forward to this. It isn't a huge book and I don't think it'll take me long, but yeah, I'm very keen for that one. Okay, now, which pile shall I go for? Let's go for this pile. So recently in the Tweed Mall, they've started a community bookshop. It isn't actually a community bookshop at all. What it is a book swap. They've taken over one shop front. All the books in there you can take away for free. I love it. It's like a little bookshop, only in a mall, and it's a much bigger little bookshop. So I've taken in quite a few books, and I'll go through there and browse whenever I happen to be shopping. At the start, there was a lot of science fiction. I helped significantly in reducing that, but I'm not the only one. Typically, their books are in poor condition. I actually think I got the Jane Goodall from there as well, poor condition. But despite that, they have some really good books, and books that have clearly been beloved by one person for a long time until they decided they needed to narrow their book collection, which, as we know, is always a poor idea. They should regret it, but I don't, because I get their books. The Outposter by Gordon R. Dickson is author of the Dosai trilogy, but never mind Dosai. Arthur R. Dickson is an author that I have been enjoying for many years. He's got Arcturian Art book, which is a compilation of 3 stories. That's been a beloved book for many years. I like his writing. Dosai is probably his least favourite. Most of mine, anyway. It's his most famous, my least favourite. But whenever he's writing about alien stuff, he is super. So I'm looking forward to this. I have got this nice little sphere edition with a very science fiction-y cover. I think that's a spaceship. I don't know who thought that a spaceship would ever be that design, but I don't care. It looks good. This old one has also got that interesting thing where it says United Kingdom, 60 pence, Australia, $1.90. New Zealand, $1.90 as well. And underneath it says Australia recommended price only. Never quite got what they mean by that, but you see it often. Also from the community book swap, I got a Show Us Your Doors, C.J. Cherryh, the Faded Sun, a Kesrith saga. So we've still got that, is it called blocking? I think it's called blocking. That colour on the edges of the pages, whatchamacallit. And you can still see vague fragments of pigment on the spine under the sellotape that someone put on it, indicating that this was indeed a yellow spine door before it became a white spine door. Great artwork as always. Love that Arabian harem style with the bathing suit underneath and the animal that is a combination of many mammals we know and true to none. Great cover art. I really can't. Who did the cover art? I haven't checked that yet. I think I did when I picked it up, but not since. Oh yeah, and of course it's a door, so it's got the nice black and white illustrations on the inside. Cover art front piece sketch is by the author. Really? I didn't know that Cherry did her own sketches. I knew that Tanith Lee did, but I didn't know. Okay, C.J. Cherry, not only a talented, very talented science fiction writer, but a very talented black and white drawer. And the cover art was done by Gino Diacchio. Also, as you can tell from the condition, from that community shop, is Arthur C. Clarke, The Songs of Distant Earth. And I was really happy to find this because I don't own a lot of Arthur C. Clarke. I always liked his writing. I liked the science fiction element to him, but he was not, for most of the years where I was reading him, he wasn't a favourite author, so I didn't hang on to his books like I did Roger Zelazny, for example. And now you can't find Arthur C. Clarke anywhere. Even the library only has 2 Arthur C. Clarke books, which is woeful. So if I want to read Arthur C. Clarke, and I do, I need to acquire them. This is apparently a first paperback edition, and it is worn poorly. But it's got, is that Michael Whelan? I think it's Michael Whelan. Cover art by Michael Whelan. I'm getting better at this. So it's got beautiful cover art. It is still holding together more or less, and I am looking forward to reading that. It's one of his more meaty books. It might take me a while, and it might take me a while to get to it. Also, in the free bookshop, I came across Star Silk by Sydney J. Van Siock, of which I know very little. I have a feeling that I watched a BookTube review for one of Van Siock's other books, and based on the strength of that faint memory, I picked this up. I do also like that fantasy cover, and I thought I was going to enjoy it until I read on the back, which has got that pretty little portrait cut out, that this is actually the 3rd book concluding the story that began in his celebrated Blue Song and Dark Child. 2 books which I am 99% sure I've never heard of. So if you know Star Silk, let me know if it can be read as a standalone, or if I should put it on the back burner until I can find 2 other books, or if I should just really not bother and take it back for someone else who has read the first books. I don't know. You tell me what you think. In yet another Opshop charity shop. This is a good one, another good one. This one finds jobs for people who have got disabilities or are having a hard time getting back into the workplace. They provide work opportunities that are very poorly paid for these people to get up that work experience, get them out of the house, get something on their resume so that they can get a real job. It used to have a wonderful book section. It's recently done itself up to have lots of empty space. I don't know why an op shop would think that's a great idea, but they did. There's very few books that I can get from there now. But for some time, for the last 3 visits, when I didn't find anything on one of them, I've been eyeing off All Systems Red by Martha Wells. Now, I do have a review for this book. I heard it in audiobook, narrated by, was it Nicholas Free? Anyway, he did a fantabulous job. I can't imagine my voice inside my head doing better than what he did with this book. And I thought, cover art, by the way, by... Oh, I hate it when they do this. Cover art by Jamie Jones, cover design by Christian Folzer. I don't get it. It's a picture with words on it. How do you need design? Never mind. Anyway. So for a while I've been thinking I don't really need to buy this book because I've listened to the audio and the audio is great. If I'm going to buy it ever, it's going to be buying the audio because the narration's so good. On the other hand, when have I really regretted buying a book? And how many times have I regretted not buying a book? So I bought this book. At the very least, it's going to sit in the W section on my shelves over there. And every now and then, if I start to forget about this series, this will remind me. I think I'm up to number 7. I haven't been reviewing them all as I go. It feels very much like one continual story. And while I very rarely review a series as a series, I think the Murderbot Diaries are going to be the change to that. I think they will work better reviewed as a series than as individual books. Okay, what else have we got here? Back up the hill to Clunes and Uncle Peter's books. Out in the $2 bin, I found this cute little thing. It is Dragons, edited by Carolyn Lloyd. I don't know who Carolyn Lloyd is, but I do know who dragons are. And I just loved the cover art. Cover art is spectacular. How good is this? How good. I could probably have bought it just for the cover art. It's an Armada book, and it is illustrated by John Patience. And while it is indubitably a $2 children's book in appalling condition, there's some good stuff in here, so I'm actually quite looking forward to it. For example, here at the end, you have got one of J.R.R. Tolkien's poems with some fantabulous black and white illustrations, and The Last Dragon. The Last Dragon in the World by Tove Jansson. Now, I don't know how many of you off the top of your head are going to recognize the name Tove Jansson. She is a Swedish author. She wrote one of those really popular children's series that I've never seen or read. I think it's the Moon Trolls? Probably the Moon Trolls. But she also wrote one of the most beautiful literary, mostly non-fiction books called The Summer House? The Summer Island? The Summer Village? Something Summer. It's over there somewhere. Where's it gone? This is annoying me. Chirp. It's annoying you too, isn't it? Not really. Anyway, I'll find and reread it one day, but it's a beautiful story about the author and her grandmother who would go to this tiny island in the Baltic for summer, which a lot of Swedes do. They'll have these little summer houses they go to. It's adorable. Oh yes, and here's the Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. I'm not sure if I even have this poem in any of my other books. Hopefully it isn't edited. The Jabberwocky is spectacular. Okay, so $2 from Uncle Peter, thank you. Now, back to, I'm pretty sure this came from the Southport shops. Now, hands up, who knows Randolph Stowe? If you aren't Australian, the chances aren't good. Randolph Stowe is known in Australia for one of his most famous and award-winning books, Merry-Go-Round in the Sea. What do you want from me? Shoulder? Certainly not shoulder. Merry-Go-Round in the Sea. Generations of school children and literature students have read it with a complete lack of enthusiasm. I also read it with a complete lack of enthusiasm back in the day. It was probably very good. I should probably reread it. Randolph Stowe was born in West Australia back in, I'm going to say the 30s, and I could be wrong, but quite some time ago. When it was remote, fridges didn't exist, high temperatures were as appalling in the Red Centre as they are today. So he was Australian, but he moved to England in 1960 or 1962, and after that he basically lived in England his whole life. No, please don't chew books. Please don't. Chew other things. There's other things I give you to chew. He too was familiar with parrots because West Australia. Now, To the Islands is one I have not read of his. I haven't actually read that much of his. This is a revised edition, Picador fiction. They did a lot of literary type things. And it's called on the back a classic Australian novel. I think it's more than of a niche Australian novel than classic. It leans heavily on the spiritual fables set in the far northwest of Western Australia. To the Islands, I expect it to have a lot of Dreamtime mythology, and I'm there for it. I love Dreamtime mythology. I read it a lot. It's very niche, but I like it. Oh, there we go. Randolph Stowe was born in Geraldton, West Australia in 1935. He did various things. And since 1960, he's lived mainly in Suffolk, England, and he's won a whole heap of awards. So despite not loving Merry-Go-Round in the Sea when I encountered it, I am very fond of Randolph Stowe. And another book that I found up in Clunes was one of my all-time favourite books, my most weird of the weird, Tourmaline by Randolph Stowe. This book is one I adore. This is not my copy. I got one for Chris of Liminal Spaces because I saw it on the shelf. This is a book that I've been recommending to people for years. No one knows what to make of it. But if Chris loves Liminal Spaces books, this is as liminal as you get. It reads a little bit like classic Australian literature, and it is set in this desolate, desiccated Australian desert. But the note from the author in the front piece is the action of this novel is to be imagined as taking place in the future. A future in which there is no water. It's hard to tell if there's no water in the town of Tourmaline or if there's just no water in the world, because when you're in outback Australia, it sometimes feels like there's no water in the world. But yeah, no, it's a very strange book. I truly adore it, and I'm hoping to like To the Islands as much. This is turning into one hell of a long me talking at the camera. Okay, so again in Clunes, I came across Agatha Christie, The Man in the Brown Suit. I was discussing Agatha Christie with Jeff just yesterday, and I have decided that I want to collect all of the Agatha Christies because otherwise I never can find the one I want to read when I want to read it. Once again, hardly any of them in the library except the famous two, Death on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile. They're everywhere. All the other ones, not so much. The Man in the Brown Suit is one of her very early novels. At present, I've got over 60 of her books, and I've read most of them. Okay, The Man in the Brown Suit is probably her fourth published book, though it's hard to tell with her because she's got the English publications and the American publications. So it's a bit hard to tell. I'm very enthusiastic. This is one of the few Panther editions of Agatha Christie that I have, but I do quite like the illustration there, and I don't think I've ever read it. Hang in there. Chirp, 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 chirp. Chirp, chirp. Say hello to your adoring fans who have been listening to you for a while now. Yes, that'll do. Chirp. Okay. We're still up the mountain in Clunes. I came across this completely and utterly non-science fiction and random book. There is a series called Every Man's Library. Jules Burt would know if this came out in mimicry of Penguin. I suspect it did. You don't see many of them around. This one is in preserved, I guess you would say, condition. It is number 847. I don't know what that means. I am not much of a collector. I'm more of a reader, and I am really keen to read this one. The Heimskringla, which I am doubtless mispronouncing, and if you're from Iceland, please forgive me, is a book written by Snorri Sturluson, who was Icelandic, and he was born in 1179. He was known among historians, especially people who are into what's known as the Viking era, nothing to do with the TV series, into Viking era history. He's notoriously a source because the Northlanders in that era didn't write things down. They wrote runestones that would say things like, I don't know, Rognvald went to Mikkelgard with his lith and came back and had this stone carved for his mother who died while he was away. But they didn't really write down their daily life or their stories. They were much more verbal mythology based. So when in the 1100s, Snorri Sturluson wrote this down, he was essentially preserving a culture about which we would know almost nothing if he hadn't done it. So he's a legend. He is absolutely a legend. And the stories that he writes are also legends. Now, I've read some of them, and I've read excerpts from some of them, but you've got things like Harold the Fair-Haired, you've got Halfdan the Black, the Ynglinga Saga, and Hakon the Good. I'm really into this era of history. I don't review them much. I think they're way too niche. This is one of the old books. It's got that beautiful frontispiece, and the pages are not quite onion skin, but they're very thin and almost onion skin-like. I'm looking forward to this significantly. It will take me a long time to read, and I will relish every second. Another Agatha Christie, The Clocks. This is one I didn't have, and I'm glad to have it in Fontana with that beautiful illustration. Don't remember where I got it. It was too long ago. MMK, Death in Kashmir. Da 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 da. With this gorgeous black and white wraparound cover by George Sharp. I hear no one talking about MMK. Oh, as you can tell, it's a penguin. I hear no one talking about MMK, and that's really very unfortunate. She was a spectacular author. I think she grew up in India, in Raj, India, and two of her biggest and possibly best known, if she has best known books, are set there. One of them turned into a movie, and you don't hear anything about that either, The Far Pavilions. The other one was Shadow of the Moon, and perhaps they're seen by readers these days as romances, because there is a relationship developing in both of them, but they are far more about the land, about what the land actually is, about the people, about the history. They are gorgeous, they are rich, they're quite stunning. And because she followed was it an army or an administrator husband around the world, she wrote a series of these little thriller books. Death in Kashmir, Death in the Bahamas, is that one? And they're very niche. You find one every now and then, but not regularly. I might do one whole video on MMK one time. Yes, that one was great. As a side note on how romance as a genre drifts, Everyman's Library publishes The Helmskringa as a romance, which is not what any of us would consider to be a romance these days. So that's just a bit of fun. Okay, somewhere, probably in Southport, I came across a cheap pan book by Nicholas Montserrat, Something to Hide. Isn't it magnificent? It is so of its era. And I know that one day I'll be feeling like nothing more than some pulpy, vintage thriller, and I will pick this up and it will meet everything that I need from my reading experience. It's got some people admiring it on the cover. One of them was actually quite funny. Where is it? This book is so grippingly grim. Ooh. And demands to be read at a sitting, said the writer. Was the writer publication, or was it Nicholas Montserrat lauding his own book? I don't know. The Evening News thinks that it is a high-tension thriller about a motorist who picks up a girl hitchhiker. I doubt if any reader will be able to resist devouring it at a single gulp. Well, it's pretty small. I can probably gulp that in a day. Sure, why not? Okay, nearing the end of the pile, we have a non-fiction. This is another penguin of the older variety and poorer variety. Not sure where I found this one. It's called Arabian Sands, and it's by Wilfred Singer. Great cover. And I'm not going to claim for a second that the cover wasn't part of what made me put that in my shopping basket. But reading the back is interesting as well. Oh, that cover photograph, by the way, is by George Roger. So Wilfred Thesiger, I'm almost certainly pronouncing that incorrectly. Thesiger, but is perhaps the last and certainly one of the greatest, the British travellers among the Arabs. It sounds like he had an interesting life in diplomatic affairs, and he knows an aspect of Arabia, as they called it at the time. I don't think we're allowed to call that anymore. That would be inconsistent with our current understanding of it. It also has these rather beautiful black and white photos in the centre. Love that one. They are beautiful. Some of the images that you find in books, including the one I'm reading at the moment, are good but not artistic, whereas I defy you to find a better portrait than this portrait of a camel. And camels, of course, you know, we've all heard them called the ships of the desert. And if you're trying to travel through the desert, in this iconic style photo, they're probably very welcome. I have not got along well with the camels that I have met. And here's another gorgeous black and white photo of a port that I believe is still a busy port today. So the final on this tray is Jeanette Winterson, Tangle Wreck. I have been rereading some Jeanette Winterson this year and reading a couple of new ones. It seems to be the year for Jeanette Winterson. And when I reviewed the last one I read, someone recommended Tanglereek. Whoever it was, thank you. I now have it. I will read it when I get around to it. Which may not be soon, because just look at this enormous tray of books that I've acquired, and it's not like I lack for books already in the room. Whoa, I think this might be the longest video I have ever made, and I hope that YouTube doesn't edit it. Thank you for watching. If you are still watching, which is amazing, comment on any of the books that I've got. Comment on your books. Comment. Thank you for watching. Bye.